It's 7 p.m. Thursday, September 5th, here in Seoul.
Coming up on News Center tonight. Heavy showers drench the Korean peninsula with heavy rain advisories and warnings being issued nationwide. This while the country also braces for the fast-approaching Typhoon Lingling.
Rays of optimism shine through financial markets as the U.S. and China agree to resume trade talks next month in Washington. It'll be their first face-to-face since the trade war's rapid escalation in recent weeks.
Korea asks the UN's nuclear watchdog to bring the international community together to respond to Japan's plan to dump radioactive waste in the Pacific Ocean.
And President Moon Jae-in is in Laos, the last stop on his swing through Southeast Asia. He's the first Korean leader to visit the nation and will be looking to strengthen ties in a range of areas, including development and infrastructure. News Center begins now. Good evening and welcome to Arirang News Center, coming to you live from Seoul. I'm Arirang.
And I'm Han-daeun. Welcome to the program. We'll begin with the heavy downpours drenching the nation. Heavy rain warnings have been issued for many parts of the country, including Seoul and surrounding areas, as the autumn monsoon front continues to affect the peninsula.
Korea is also bracing for Typhoon Lingling, now on its path to hit South Korea this weekend, packing winds of up to 200 kilometers per hour. Our Ji-young has our top story.
Heavy downpours have already drenched Seoul and the surrounding regions. The Korea Meteorological Administration issued heavy rain warnings as of 4 p.m. Thursday for many parts of the nation, including Seoul, Gyeonggi-do, Gangwon-do, Jeollado provinces, and Jeju Island. These regions are currently receiving up to 50 millimeters of rain per hour, accompanied by thunder and lightning. An expert at K-Weather, a private Korean weather agency, forecasted that heavy rain due to the autumn monsoon front is likely to continue until tomorrow morning in the central regions, including the capital area and Gangwon-do province.
Heavy rain warnings are issued when more than 90 millimeters of rain is expected in 3 hours, or 180 millimeters of rain is expected in 12 hours.
What's more, Typhoon Lingling is expected to slam into the Korean peninsula this weekend. Torrential rain and strong winds are expected to lash Jeju Island from Friday until Sunday. The storm is then expected to pass through the capital region en route to Vladivostok, Russia, the following day.
The typhoon is expected to pack winds of up to 35 meters per second as it passes the Western Sea. This is strong enough to turn over a running train.
As serious damage is expected, people are advised to prepare thoroughly to minimize any harm to lives and property. Experts advise securing windows, stay indoors, and taking extra precaution against landslides. Ji-young, Arirang News.
Asian stock markets closed higher today after the U.S. and China agreed to resume trade talks. Investor sentiment was also boosted by the British Parliament's passage of a bill to stop a no-deal Brexit. Our Yoon Jung-min with the details.
The U.S. and China are set to resume trade talks early October in Washington, D.C., following new tariffs that the two countries have imposed on one another. The Chinese Ministry of Commerce said Thursday that negotiators from the U.S. and China held phone talks and agreed to hold another round of face-to-face negotiations next month. China's top negotiator Lu Ho will meet his American counterpart Steve Mnuchin, and working-level talks will also be held in mid-September prior to that meeting, the Chinese ministry said. In the meantime, the Brexit deadline was pushed to January 31st next year as the British Parliament approved on Wednesday a bill that would require legislative approval for a no-deal Brexit. Worries over the UK's messy divorce from the European Union has also been fueling global uncertainties, along with a trade conflict between Washington and Beijing. Asian markets reacted positively to the news on Thursday. Japan's Nikkei and Topix indices saw around 2% increases. China's Shanghai Composite was up around 1%, breaking the 3,000 mark at its intraday peak. South Korea's benchmark KOSPI was up around 0.8% and topped the 2,000 mark for the first time since early August, driven by demand from foreign investors. The tech-heavy Kosdaq was also up around 0.6%. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
The U.S. Federal Reserve says the American economy is growing at a modest pace, similar to the evaluations made in June and July. In its Beige Book report, it also stated that most U.S. businesses remained optimistic about their prospects. Our Kim Hyo-sun reports.
The U.S. Federal Reserve says the country's economy is expanding at a modest pace. That's according to the Beige Book, which is a report on the U.S. economy based on reports from the Fed's 12 regional banks released on Wednesday. This is a similar evaluation as in June and July and is in contrast to April's evaluation that said the economic activities grew at a slight to moderate pace. The report also explained that manufacturing was down slightly from the previous period. Despite the prolonged uncertainties over tariff and trade policies, the central bank said most U.S. businesses remain optimistic about their prospects. Meanwhile, the U.S. trade deficit narrowed slightly in July, according to the Commerce Department on Wednesday. It said U.S. exports increased in July to $207.4 billion, $1.2 billion more than in June, while imports dropped $400 million from the previous month to stand at $261.4 billion. Analysts say this is due to a decrease in demand for capital goods driven by America's sluggish manufacturing industry. Imports from China, the prime target of President Trump's trade offensive launched last year, fell 1.9% to $39 billion, the lowest level since April. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
South Korea's ruling party and the government agreed today to revise several statutes as part of efforts to create a fair economy, one of the Moon administration's key economic policies. Our Kim Hae-sung with more.
The government will ease the so-called 5% disclosure rule to help increase shareholder activism in the country. The 5% rule mandates that an investor who owns 5% or more of the shares in a listed firm needs to provide a detailed report to the country's financial watchdog when selling or buying more than 1% of the stocks within 5 days. Critics have said the measure limits shareholders' rights as it exposed their investment strategies. The revision would enable an extension of the reporting period and filing of simpler reports for investors whose purpose of buying or selling of stocks is not intended to exercise influence over management decisions. This is just one of the 23 legislative changes the Korean government and the ruling party announced Thursday to help improve corporate governance and address unfair market practices.
We will revise the law so corporate board of directors and shareholders' meetings are run competitively. We will strengthen rules related to corporate disclosure and circular shareholding structures.
A so-called 10% rule will also be eased. The rule mandates that an investor who owns more than 10% of a listed company needs to return the profit gained from short-term trading to the company. Regulators will provide exemptions to this rule for the National Pension Fund if it comes up with guidelines to prevent the misuse of confidential information or insider trading. In addition, the employment period of external board members will be cut from a maximum 9 years to 6 years to enhance independence. Other revisions include consumer rights protection in e-commerce and finance and stronger regulations for holding companies. The ruling Democratic Party said it'll work closely with the government to pass the revisions by the second quarter of 2020. Kim Hae-sung, Arirang News.
President Moon Jae-in arrived in Laos today, the last leg of his three-nation tour to ASEAN nations. During summit talks with his Laotian counterpart, the two agreed on some concrete steps to ensure mutual prosperity and enhance cooperation between Korea and the Mekong region. Our Park Ki-jun has the details on the summit.
President Moon Jae-in held talks with his Laotian counterpart, Vorachith, on Thursday to discuss concrete ways to advance their bilateral relations. During their summit in Vientiane on Thursday, the two leaders agreed to join hands and create a community where both countries can mutually grow. This will be done by developing agricultural communities and improving Laos's economy as well as its people's lives through infrastructure projects along the Mekong River. Korea and Laos will also enhance their partnership with numerous MOUs. Korea will provide funding of $500 million to Laos through the Economic Development Cooperation Fund between 2020 and 2023. Seoul and Vientiane will also step up exchanges in farming technology, ICT, and startups. Citing the country's abundant resources and its great potential for growth as the battery of Asia, President Moon highlighted the unlimited potential the country has for economic advancement. Riding on such potential, the South Korean president is optimistic that the two countries can achieve mutual growth combining Korea's New Southern policy and Laos's development strategy. And President Vorachith praised President Moon's ongoing efforts to achieve complete denuclearization and lasting peace on the Korean Peninsula. Moon thanked Laos for its consistent support in its peace roadmap for the Korean Peninsula. The two countries will also work to strengthen ties between Korea and ASEAN, as well as between Korea and the wider Mekong Delta region. This will happen while they continue to cooperate closely on the upcoming South Korea-ASEAN Special Summit and South Korea-Mekong Summit hosted by Korea this November. This trip to Laos completes President Moon's ASEAN diplomacy. His visit to 7 ASEAN nations has secured more than 130 projects ranging from agriculture to Fourth Industrial Revolution technology. The Blue House says it will work to accelerate those projects to make concrete results. Park Ki-jun, Arirang News, Vientiane.
North Korea has decided not to send its foreign minister to the UN General Assembly later this month, citing what it called scheduling reasons. At the same time, Pyongyang has told the UN to scale down its staff presence in the north, a possible sign of the North's discontent over sanctions and a lack of progress in nuclear talks. Our Oh Jung-hee has the details.
Ahead of the UN General Assembly that's set to take place later this month, North Korea is expressing its discontent over the status quo, namely the stalled denuclearization talks with the U.S. and sanctions pressure. While there were hopes for a high-level meeting between North Korea's Foreign Minister Ri Yong-ho and U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo on the sidelines of the UN gathering in New York, Pyongyang has decided that its top diplomat won't be there. According to Reuters, North Korea's mission to the UN cited Ri's scheduling reasons, but his absence comes after Ri denounced Pompeo last month for remarks on keeping strongest-ever sanctions and called him, quote, the die-hard toxin of U.S. diplomacy. At the same time, the North has told the UN to cut down its number of staff members in the North for humanitarian aid. Reuters reports the Secretary General of Pyongyang's National Coordinating Committee for the UN sent a letter to the top UN official in North Korea last month. He said UN's humanitarian aid programs have failed as they've been politicized by, quote, hostile forces. The North demanded the staff of UNDP, WHO, UNICEF, and WFP be cut down by the end of the year. It added it doesn't need aid coordination officers and they may visit the North when required.
I think North Korean leadership is trying to send a message to the world that economic sanctions on North Korea is unjust and very destructive to North Korean people and should be lifted. And at the same time, North Korean leadership is trying to send a message to the Trump administration that time does not necessarily favor the United States.
The news comes as North Korea seeks to deepen relations with China and Russia amid a prolonged stalemate in nuclear negotiations with the U.S. An unnamed UN diplomat told Reuters that Beijing and Moscow have recently pushed a, quote, false narrative that sanctions are the cause of the humanitarian crisis in the North and therefore should be lifted. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi is back in Beijing after his 3-day visit to Pyongyang without having met North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Pyongyang state media said Wang met with Lee Soo-yong, a senior official in charge of international affairs for the North's ruling party, and passed on greetings from Chinese President Xi Jinping and his wife. Observers say Wang's visit was strictly for working purposes to prepare for Kim's potential visit to China next month. The People's Republic of China celebrates its 70th anniversary on October 1st, and Pyongyang and Beijing celebrate the 70th anniversary of their diplomatic ties on October 6th. Experts and officials from around the world are gathered in the Korean capital for the annual Seoul Defense Dialogue. They'll be looking at security issues related to the Korean peninsula. What's noticeable is that a U.S. representative participated in the event in an apparent move to dissipate concerns of a rift between the South Korea and U.S. alliance. Kim Ji-yeon has more.
Building peace together, challenges and visions. That's the theme for this year's multinational security dialogue platform, the Seoul Defense Dialogue, aimed at facilitating a platform for discussion on the geopolitical situation on the Korean Peninsula and the surrounding region, as well as peacekeeping operations and cybersecurity. The 8th Vice Ministerial event held its opening ceremony in Seoul on Thursday. The event brings together hundreds of officials and experts from around 50 countries and 2 international organizations. In his opening address, Seoul's Defense Minister Chung Kyung-do highlighted the achievements of the comprehensive military agreement signed almost 12 months ago in alleviating inter-Korean tensions. This despite a series of launches of short-range ballistic missiles by North Korea in recent weeks. He highlighted efforts to build mutual trust in the region through dialogue, while also saying South Korea's security strategy lies in achieving peace by building strong military strength and defense capabilities.
After the inter-Korean military agreement, during the past year, military guard posts have been removed from the inter-Korean border on the trial basis, while the disarmament of security guards at the joint security area in Panmunjom has been completed. Also, up until now, some 1,500 Korean War remains have been excavated in the DMZ.
He also highlighted the efforts to build mutual trust in the region through dialogue and raised security concerns, saying that neighboring countries near the peninsula, presumably Japan, are trying to trigger tensions. During the first plenary session of the peace process on the Korean Peninsula and international cooperation, Vice Defense Minister Park Jae-min echoed Chung's remarks, underscoring the government's efforts to maintain the momentum of dialogue for denuclearization. It's the first time a U.S. Forces Korea commander participates in the annual event, while General Robert Abrams participated in the opening ceremony and the banquet. The fact that U.S. Forces Korea Commander Robert Abrams came to the event is viewed by many as a sigh of relief, amid speculation that there's a widening rift after Washington rebuked Seoul for its refusal to renew a military intel sharing pact with Japan. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Amid growing concerns that Japan might discharge contaminated water from its wrecked Fukushima power plant into the ocean, South Korea is taking the issue to the international level to find the best possible solution. Meanwhile, Japan's foreign ministry tells international diplomats that no decision has been made on how to dispose of the wastewater. Kim Min-ji has more.
South Korea's issue of handling radioactive water from Japan's crippled Fukushima nuclear power plant. The country's science ministry on Thursday said it sent a letter to the International Atomic Energy Agency, citing concerns of damage to the global environment and people's health.
There is a growing need to work together on this matter, and the government has taken steps to create an international cooperation system. Our letter calls for efforts from the IAEA to make sure people are safe from the radioactive waste.
This comes after Japan said that it would discharge radioactive water from the power plant, which was devastated by an earthquake-triggered tsunami in March 2011, into the Pacific Ocean. Seoul plans to raise the issue at the IAEA's General Conference later this month, as well as highlight to other countries the importance of working together on the matter. It's been more than 8 years since the nuclear meltdown, but Japan has yet to decide how to handle the contaminated water, saying it's still considering options. In addition to releasing the water into the ocean, other strategies on the table include evaporation, deep underground injection, as well as adding more space to store it. At a briefing hosted by Tokyo's foreign ministry to discuss the issue on Wednesday, Japan tried to reassure diplomats from 22 countries, including South Korea and the U.S., about the safety of the nuclear plant, adding that it will continue to provide the international community with related information. With Japan expected to run out of storage space for the wastewater within 3 years, it's raised questions as to what would happen next. A government panel of experts are mulling ways to solve the issue, with Tokyo expected to make a final decision based on their report. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Samsung Electronics held a forum in Tokyo on Wednesday on the chip-making business, and despite the trade tensions with Japan, it was bigger than last year. The Samsung Foundry Forum 2019 Japan was a chance for the firm to showcase its technology portfolio and build ties with Japanese companies. It drew more than 300 participants, a notable success considering the restrictions Japan has placed on companies like Samsung that have long relied on a few key Japanese exports. IFA, one of the world's biggest consumer tech shows, will kick off in the German capital of Berlin on Friday. Global tech companies will showcase their latest products from consumer electronics to home appliances during the six-day event. This year, new innovations utilizing AI and 5G networks will take the spotlight, such as 5G televisions and AI refrigerators that can identify foods with built-in cameras. Familiar names including Samsung, LG and Amazon will take center stage at IFA alongside 1,800 firms from all over the world. Hong Kong leader Carrie Lam says China fully supports her recent decision to completely withdraw a controversial extradition bill that sparked months of protests in the territory. Hong Kong activists, however, are not satisfied with Lam's decision, saying more needs to be done. Kan Young-woo has more.
Hong Kong leader Carrie Lam says it's her government, not China's, that made the decision to withdraw the extradition bill. But she made it clear that she has Beijing's full support.
They respected my view, and they supported me all the way. So whether it is in the earlier stages of processing the bill and then suspension of the bill and then withdrawing the bill yesterday, this is the same position.
In a press conference on Thursday, Lam said there will be no debate and no voting when Parliament resumes amid questions over whether the bill would be formally withdrawn. The Hong Kong leader also stressed that the most important challenge in resolving the problem is to stop the violence, strictly enforce the law, and restore peace. But Hong Kong residents and protesters, angered by the excessive use of force by police over the past 3 months, say the withdrawal of the bill came too late and it's not enough.
Of course not. We are asking for 5 things. She's only requests a response on us on 1, but it's not actually after 3 months and causing a lot of death, damage, and a lot of people ridiculously arrested by the police. And
activists have vowed not to give in until the government accepts other 4 demands, including an independent investigation into alleged police brutality against protesters. Kan Young-woo, Arirang News.
North Korea's Vice Premier Lee Ryong-nam says the North wants to strengthen economic cooperation with Russia's Far East. Lee is in Vladivostok for the Eastern Economic Forum. The Far East region of Primorsky Krai said on its website that right after Lee got there on Monday, he met with the region's governor, Oleg Koziemiako. Lee said the North is now focusing on economic development and that prospects are bright for cooperation with Russia in the areas of construction, agriculture, fisheries, and tourism. Today, instead of attending the forum's plenary session, Lee will be meeting with other senior Russian officials. Asia's biggest film festival, the Busan International Film Festival, is set to kick off next month for a 10-day run. Around 300 films will be showcased, and our Choi Si-young takes a closer look at the opening and closing films for this year.
This year's opening film at the Busan International Film Festival is The Horse Thieves Roads of Time, directed by Yerlan Norman Kambetov and Lisa Takeba. The film starts with a breadwinner going to market to sell his horse, but instead getting killed. This film from Kazakhstan is similar to classic American Western films.
This film is narrated from an omnipresent point of view.
Closing film is Moonlit Winter by South Korean director Im Dae-hyung. The film tells the story of love once lost but recaptured afterwards between a mother and her daughter. The festival will kick off on October 3rd, and to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the Korean film industry, 10 major Korean films will premiere at the festival. Choi Si-young, Arirang News.
U.S. President Donald Trump has emphasized once again that he's not looking for regime change in North Korea and that he believes North Korea has tremendous economic potential. Answering questions from reporters at the White House on Wednesday, Trump lumped North Korea together with Iran, suggesting the possibility of striking a deal with them. Such remarks are seen as a gesture to get the North back to the negotiating table amid a deadlock in the denuclearization talks. The British Parliament has approved a bill that would require legislative approval for a no-deal Brexit. That pushes the Brexit deadline to January 31st next year. The proposed legislation was passed by MPs on Wednesday, inflicting a defeat on Prime Minister Boris Johnson. The bill will force Johnson to ask the EU for an extension beyond the October 31st deadline if a deal has not been agreed by then. The Prime Minister responded by calling for a general election, but lawmakers also rejected his proposal of early elections for October 15th. The European Commission on Wednesday also stepped up its no-deal preparations with emergency funds to help businesses and workers hit by Brexit. South Korean cultural authorities have revealed a 5-year roadmap to preserve and manage Korea's Neo-Confucian academies, known as Hwon. 9 of these academies were recently added to the UNESCO World Heritage List. The roadmap includes maintenance projects, a host of global forums, and a cultural exchange system with foreign heritage sites such as China's Temple of Confucius. Sewon were established during the Joseon dynasty to honor renowned Confucian scholars and to educate the youth. In men's football, South Korea will be going up against Georgia later tonight. The friendly match will take place in Istanbul at 10:30 p.m. Korea time. The game will be Team Korea's final tune-up for an actual World Cup qualifier next week against Turkmenistan. Eyes will be on youngster Lee Gang-in, who at 18 years old is making his international debut. That has been your 3-minute news flash. It is that time now where we take a look at some of Arirang's digital media content.
And today we have another episode of Kori Ater, where foreigners share their love for Korea.
안녕하세요 everyone. My name is Shakris. My name is Valeria. Alright guys, so today we will make a video reaction in collaboration with A+ Arirang TV.
Oh, hey.
Is he Korean? Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
This is soju, which is kind of like the Korean vodka, which you can see very commonly around Korea. So in today's episode, we'll be learning about the Korean alcohol culture.
근데 소주가 음식이랑 되게 잘 어울려요. 삼겹살이랑 소주를 줄여서 삼소.
So I didn't know that. Chiso. Like chinek?
한국에서는 윗사람이든 제가 대접해야 되는 자리거나 조금 어려운 사람이다. 이럴 때는 꼭 상표를 이렇게 손으로 짚고
When I meet my friend's father, and then they give me something, what I said is like this. What I do is like this, and they told me like, "Hey, 친구야? Are you friend with my father?" So, okay. Okay. So yeah, so I know that kind of behavior here in Korea.
또 더 빨리 먹으려고 술 게임을 합니다.
Ah, 술 게임. Now we're gonna play a game called Baskin-Robbins 31, and this is a game where whoever hits the number 31 has to drink.
Why? Just kidding.
I think we're safe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 26, 27. 잠깐만. Am I 26? 동구밭 과수 원샷. So in Korea, a very popular activity that they like to do at a restaurant is put the spoon
in the bottom. This is what we like to call a soju mic.
I never tried that. I also never saw that in the...
See you next week.
눈치 없는
See you guys next week. Bye.
They look so happy now. Yeah, I think they are drunk already. What do you think?
Yeah, I didn't know some of these things like games or the spoon in the
Me
soju
too.
bottle.
It's like soju mic.
Yeah.
Did you drink soju?
Yeah, I tried before.
How did you
Actually,
think?
it's pretty strong.
But it looks like water only, right?
It looks like water, but it burns. To me, it has like fresh flavor. It's okay, but many foreigners going to be too strong for you.
Anyway, I think I enjoyed this video watching this and I learned some. Yeah, it was fun. I hope you like our video together with my beautiful friend again. So guys, until here, annyeong. Bye bye.
Heavy rain alerts have been issued in the central region, and with the season's 13th Typhoon Lingling approaching, it's expected to bring an extra amount of rain to the peninsula.
Let's get more details from our Michelle Park, who is at the Weather Center. Michelle.
Now, the rain clouds have developed across the central region, dumping heavy amounts of rain accompanied by thunder and lightning. And right now, the precipitation is pretty strong in the northern parts of the nation, with some regions currently under heavy rain warnings and advisories. The autumn rain is forecast to soak the nation until tomorrow, mostly before noon. But unfortunately, fast approaching Typhoon Lingling is expected to bring another bout of heavy downpours starting tomorrow. The typhoon will track its way through the country by Saturday and dissipate in Russia by Sunday. Now, in the meantime, the capital and parts of Chungcheongnam-do and also Gangwon-do province will get up to 80 millimeters of precipitation until tomorrow, and less amount is expected for the southern regions. And checking out the readings for tomorrow, it's going to be stuffy and humid when we get up. Now, with similar temperature readings as today, mostly hovering at around 23 degrees Celsius. And your Friday will be overcast or wet, with Seoul and Daegu topping out to 30 degrees, while Busan hits up to 29 and Jeju to 28 degrees. Now, we'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
That will wrap it up for this edition of Arirang News. Thank you, as always, for watching.
News in Depth is next.